About 5 years ago, my company brought in an individual to see if my position was no longer needed. I passed with flying colors. Not to give too much info away, I was hired in an organization as a job title of basically helper. Well, for someone who is supposed to just be helping, I had a ridiculous amount of work. Almost all of my coworkers were huge, technologically illiterate boomers, so I actually sort of thrived as this very useful person. For example, one guy who would spend half his day copying items and pasting them into another program we use, he didn't even use Control-C, Control-V. He would right-click, then copy into the files menu or something, and insert copied item from clipboard. He was so proud of himself when he showed me because, don't worry, you won't have to retype everything. I wrote a program to do this automatically but did not tell him, so I would just run it occasionally as part of my responsibilities. Anyways, I did a lot of stuff like this. I'd estimate I saved about 15 hours of work every day. On top of the 8.5 hours I did too. But then insert Sergeant Fuckface. This wasn't the military, but I just like to call him that. We're having a team meeting when he shows up. White hair, combed, okay-ish, a scrunched face, glasses. He just sorta showed up one day and took notes during our morning meeting. At one point, someone brought up a name of one of our customers. I said, "Oh, is that the 300-pound guy with the big beard?" Sort of as a joke because I mostly do back-end stuff. There was a guy like this I recently did some entrance stuff for, but I was wrong and my boss said no, it's blah 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 some other person. Okay. Then we talked about that person a bit. Fast forward about a week and this Sergeant Fuckface is a complete fucking douchebag to me. I don't know why. He would ignore me during group conversations and literally scoff at me. Who actually scoffs at people? I was having a really rough week looking for some extremely important files. People were yelling all day, I was exasperated. Too much to do, I was having anxiety attacks at home and in the middle of the night. But it was Friday, so I was pulling through. As I looked for this file, I ended up deep in our file structure and the search returned a personal folder structure with one of the drives. I clicked out of curiosity and there was Sergeant Fuckface's notes. I opened it up and there was a whole section about me. This guy basically goes from location to location getting people fired to save the CEO's money. And he was working on me now. I scrolled through his notes, and at the very top I saw, Frosty thought a 4'10", 24-year-old female patient was a 300-pound bearded man. Clearly atrocious attention to detail. That's just one example of how completely fucked up his comments were. So, in combination with my job, which I generally liked and enjoyed helping people, knowing I wasn't getting paid enough for my effort, this horrible week I had, and Sergeant Fuckface's comments, I said fuck this. I set up 3 email configurations. To my boss, letting him know I will be taking 2 weeks of vacation time to be sent in at 10 p.m. tonight. To the company, letting them know I will not be present for 2 weeks, so whatever work they currently need me to do, they will have to do themselves. To be sent Monday morning at 4 a.m. For any emails that came in, I set an auto response that said, I will be out for an unknown amount of time. For any routine, emergency, or even occasional items, it is imperative that you reach out to Sergeant Fuckface at XXXXX for assistance. Then, I turned off every automated task I had ever set up. Then I swung by Fuckface's temporary office and said, I think I'll find a way to make your job easier. He didn't even really turn his head to look at me, but just raised one eyebrow, and then I left. I actually got multiple calls on Monday morning. I didn't answer. It didn't last long, apparently, but I stayed strong and didn't respond to anything. On Wednesday, I had a little anxiety about it, but I stayed as strong as I could. I thought about the tasks that needed a 2-day turnaround. There's no way some of the guys were keeping up with the normal duties. Guaranteed at least 2 people were no longer doing their normal jobs just to keep up with my automated tasks. I got a long email to my personal account, I guess from my resume or when I interviewed, from my boss on Thursday night of the first week. It went something like this. Frosty, I know you're a smart person and probably figured out what the company had us doing. I would say it's very important you call me, but that probably isn't going to work, I see. I've talked with Sergeant Fuckface's boss, and he'll be leaving our location. I explained our progress meetings seem to be going in the wrong direction, and you are one of our most valuable employees here. I'm sure you're probably looking at other jobs at this point, or maybe even you have started one. I hope not. If you could please reach back to me, I would like to offer you a raise. It has become very apparent how useful you are around here. I hear about it every day, believe me. So I came back on Monday with a $10,000 raise and Sergeant Fuckface out of my face. My boss apologized again in person and said he didn't get a say in it. I think it's a little weird he could have a say after I left, but not before? But I sort of get it. Edit. Hopefully this is a better edit than most r/award speech edits, but I want to say unrelatedly that while the world seems to be going to shit, every single one of us can start making a difference in it. Please just try to bicycle or walk to work once a week or skip one meat-based meal every so often. Try out composting. Or swap your dairy milk with almond/oat/coconut, etc., milk. It's easy to blame everyone else or industry and carry on like you can't make a difference, but you really can. All of us can. And if everyone starts to live more sustainably, the markets must switch and follow us, the people, the consumers, the workers. That's the way it works. And that's how we get more bicycle lanes and a more sustainable earth where our friends and family can prosper. Roommate stole from me, so her wallet vanished. Back in college, I had better credit than my 3 other roommates, so I put our internet/TV under my name, otherwise the deposit would have been $600. The cable company offered me a $300 Visa gift card upon sign-up. 2 months later, I called them because a gift card never arrived. They tell me they sent it a few weeks ago, and eventually I'm able to find out from Visa that someone used it at the Whataburger, Target, and liquor store near my house. I'm pissed off because obviously one of my roommates has used it, but I do not know which one. A few weeks later, roommate number 2 complains that their $200 birthday gift card to Target has gone missing. His mom still has the receipt, and the store was able to tell her that someone used it at a Target near our house. He's obviously pissed off too, but we've now realized it's probably one of the other 2 roommates. A couple weeks after that, roommate number 3's wallet disappears. We turned the house upside down looking for it, and we knew that it had to be in the house because her car key is attached to her wallet, and her car is parked at the house. She's absolutely frantic, sobbing, screaming, hyperventilating, etc., throwing shit everywhere, and just having an absolute meltdown while tearing the house apart. We have never seen her behave like this, so we're all kind of surprised that she'd be that upset about her wallet. It's stressful, sure, but I genuinely was concerned about how she was reacting. She says the gift card thief must have taken it, implying it is roommate number 4, the only person who hasn't had something stolen yet. A few days after that, I found her wallet in the trunk of my car. We had gone to get groceries together, and I guess she'd laid it in the trunk while we were unloading. I'm like, holy shit, I found her wallet. And then I opened it up because I'm just excited to confirm that I did indeed find her wallet. Bam! Both stolen gift cards front and center. No doubt. The Visa gift card has been my name printed on it, and roommate number 2's mom had written something off in Sharpie on his gift card. I realized that she had a meltdown because she was afraid that we would find out she was the thief. So I left the wallet, cash and all, right where it was, pushed up against the inner lip of the trunk so you couldn't see it unless you leaned further into the car. A locksmith wouldn't make her new keys without the title, and the title was in the glove box of her locked car. All in all, she spent about $500 replacing her DL, title, and keys, not to mention not being able to drive her car for 2 weeks. I moved out of state with her wallet still in my car. Finally tossed it in the trash several months later. Sometimes the universe assists you with petty revenge. Faked proof that I had a flat tire so that the lazy people in my group project would have to do the presentation themselves, therefore likely will fail. I'm in a class where a group research project/presentation is a huge chunk of overall points. Everyone knows in group projects you always have to have one slacker who doesn't do anything, and you have to compensate for it. However, I got stuck with possibly the worst 3 people to be in a project with in the class. I did the entire research, presentation, poster boards, etc., among many other annoying things myself. I tried talking to them and telling them they needed to put in their share of effort. Ignored. I'd send them tasks to do. Ignored. I'd try to schedule meetings. They'd say they were coming, and then they would leave me alone at the library. This happened from the get-go. It was abundantly clear that they expected everyone else to do the work, but everyone else turned out to just be me. Rule. We couldn't have things 100% memorized word for word, and we couldn't read off of anything. We actually had to know the subject. I was fully prepared to do most of the talking and even wrote down a small script for them and told them to know what to say during their part at the very least. The night before, I told them we had to meet, at least go over the whole thing one time, and once again, not one of them showed. At this point, I'm livid and decide they can just do it themselves, which means they'd get up there, not know a damn thing about what to say other than the small amount of info I gave them, and couldn't even bullshit anything because they did no research. Thing is, if we miss out without an excuse, we have to fail the project. If you have an excuse, then you have to have the documentation. I commute and live about an hour away, so I decided that I'll conveniently have a flat tire right before class. Went out and actually bought a tire so I could have a receipt to prove it. Emailed the professor, who said I can present by myself during his office hours. Turns out they completely bombed, and not only probably failed the project, but since they're bad students, might even make them fail the class. I took away all the towel seat reservations at the resort. It was on holidays in an all-inclusive resort. First day, we couldn't find any lounge chairs by the beach or by the sea. Fair enough. We arrived in the afternoon. Next day, we go out to a spot, but most of the spots were taken by towels. We find an empty seat, and to our surprise, many of the chairs stay reserved for almost the whole day or never get used. Third day, we decided to take some towels off of 2 loungers and enjoy our day. 4 hours in, an older couple shows up and said that they had towels there, and kick us off with help from an attendant. That pissed me off, so every following day I went to take the towels off of every unattended lounger after breakfast. And then went to watch the chaos from the balcony. Many people complained, and by the end of the week there was a sign that unattended towels would be removed. Success. Lie about having COVID to take 6 weeks off while I do your work for free? I'll throw an all-office party to announce where you really were. Mid-pandemic, my boss disappeared. Just as we were gearing up for our most challenging, time-intensive project in the last 5 years, he dropped off the face of the earth. We kept working for a week or so without him because everything was virtual and the virtual work world was still so new we didn't really need him. We were delegating tasks ourselves and completing things on our own. We spoke to coworkers maybe twice a week. But some decisions were beyond our discretion, so we would not move forward on those aspects of the project until we received a response from him. After about 7 to 10 days of total silence, we called his boss's boss, who informed our team that our boss had COVID, so he wasn't able to work right now. We took that at face value, of course, and sent him letters of well wishes and didn't bother him with work stuff or asked why he was able to notify his boss, but not us. 3 weeks go by. Not a word. We're beginning to discuss amongst ourselves whether or not he's maybe died. We are terrified and horrified and so concerned. We're contemplating calling his extended family. We're sending flowers and care packages to his apartment. Meanwhile, the project has descended into chaos because no leader was appointed in our boss's stead, so we are forced to navigate several layers of bureaucracy in order to accomplish most anything at all. Whereas in the past, he would have just signed off in real time. Around week 4 or 5, one of our coworkers suggests he doesn't really have COVID, but is instead using it as an excuse to take time off. We all jump all over our coworker, asking how he could insinuate something like that and lamenting about what a tragedy our boss is probably living through. People were chilly to him for days after that. Week 7. We've undertaking a letter-writing campaign to upper management demanding an acting boss be appointed while ours is recovering. The project is a month behind schedule. We're all working overtime every day, sometimes on weekends, without extra compensation just to keep up with the clusterfuck of the boss's sudden absence. Week 8. He finally reappears, logging into a morning meeting as though nothing happened. He looks well-rested, well-fed, has a tan. Not at all like someone who's just come on the other side of a 6-week respiratory virus. He says something quickly to the effect of, "Yeah, that was brutal. Glad to be better and glad to be back. Let's get to work." But doesn't want to talk about what happened or answer any of our questions like, "Were you in the hospital? What was it like?" etc. Fast forward to about 4 or 5 months after this, my sister sends me a promo for a fairly new reality show. I'd never heard of it, but it's on a major platform and says, "Isn't this guy a friend of yours or something? I swear I've seen you and him together." I watched the trailer for the show, and lo and behold, there's my boss, participating as a contestant on a reality TV show. Didn't take long for me to put the pieces together and realize that he took extended leave to go on TV, that he knew he wouldn't otherwise get during this massive project, and lied about it under the guise of a vicious disease that nearly all of us lost a loved one to. I sit and stew with this information, unsure of how to handle it. I knew confronting him wouldn't get me very far, but I couldn't just do nothing, right? I'm not close enough with any of my colleagues to discuss this with them and trust that they wouldn't run off and send an all-company email about it. So I slept on it for a few nights, and then the opportunity fell right into my lap. I got an email from corporate encouraging teams still working remotely to plan, quote-unquote, virtual social functions to keep a collegial structure going and to stay in touch. Among the suggestions were game night, trivia, and watch party. With the premiere of the show only a couple of weeks away, I got busy telling everyone how I'd been meaning to get into this show and it's so enticing and exciting, basically laying the groundwork to guilt them into coming to an impromptu virtual watch party off hours. I offered to get special shirts made up and send them to each person's house, whatever I had to do to get the attention of corporate. Finally, I sent an evite to all my boss's bosses and any other members of corporate I could justify inviting without making a total ass of myself. Because this is entirely virtual, my boss isn't able to overhear any of the chatter. He doesn't realize I'm hyping up the show, and he doesn't realize I planned a watch party for it. I wasn't inviting him unless he had the balls to explicitly ask about it. I was hoping he wouldn't have heard about it at all, not until afterwards. That was really the only way this could work. The night comes, and I am screen sharing the show to a whopping 64 people, a huge chunk of my department. Many members of corporate had showed up because I was the only person stupid enough to buy into their virtual social work party scheme, so they felt pressured to support it. I was holding my breath, hoping that this would go my way, bracing myself for some kind of curveball. But there wasn't even that much dramatic build-up. Right at the outset, they introduced the premise, which included the contestants being in a COVID-safe bubble in an exotic location, and gave a brief overview of each contestant. As my boss was introduced, right down to what he did for work, I could see people register delight and surprise, then go blank, just before sliding into confusion and rage. The chat took a drastic turn from, "Oh my goodness," and "I knew him when," and all sorts of pithy jokes to a brave member of my team. Or perhaps one just pushed a tad too far by all the extra hour he pulled in this douche's absence, sent the message, "Wait, when was this filmed?" My audience dropped from 64 to 58 to mid-30s, and by the time the episode was over, it was just me and the other 15 core members of the team. One asked if I had already known, but some other members of the team are very close to the boss. So all I said was, "Well, I definitely do now," and wrapped up the call party pretty quickly after that. Perhaps one of the best bonuses is that you could already tell from the episode 1 that his character arc for the show was bumbling idiot. He had his true colors on him, full display, and some production massaging up them to the 11th degree. Boss was fired. My good buddy was promoted to his place. I am an office legend now, especially since no one is 100% sure whether or not it was intentional. And it was all so satisfying that it was almost worth the dozens of hours of uncompensated overtime that led to it. Kept finding bottles of peppermint schnapps in my yard. I collected, then waited. I bought a house on a corner when I moved to this area. I kept the yard cut and clean. This corner seems to be a place where trash was thrown out regularly. From the beginning, I kept finding peppermint schnapps pints along the fence lines. The first one I hit with a mower. It seemed every day I would see them on my property in the same spot. I knew it had to be a neighbor, so I quit throwing them in the recycling bin and started to collect one after the other. I hoped to eventually find whoever had this bad habit. I filled one huge contractor bag. Then one turned into two. One day I was off early and trimming the hedges by the house. And then I heard it. A thunk followed by something hitting the fence. I finally caught the litter bug. Now, I have the car and driver. I jumped in my truck and headed the same direction the guy went. He had just got out of the car and went inside. I drove back home and loaded the heavy bags of glass pints. Later that evening, I went to this man's house. There was another car in his driveway. I got out, rang the doorbell, and walked back to get the bags. An older woman answered the door as I was coming back. She asked if she could help me. I said yes. I told her that I've dealt with this problem and was tired of it. The husband had now come outside. I took one bag and dumped it on the driveway. Bottles broke and flopped around. I grabbed the other bag and did the same. I told him that I was sick of picking up after him and better not see another pint in my yard. She immediately turned to him and started yelling. Apparently, he had a bad drinking problem and promised that he quit. He would down the pint before he got home, and my yard was his dumping zone. I never did see another bottle of schnapps after this. I purposely farted in front of a guy at the gym because he wouldn't take no for an answer. So a few things. I go to the gym to work out and decompress. I don't see it as a place to be social. I wear large over-the-ear headphones. I was at the gym and just finished one of my sets for deadlifts when a guy walks over. This is something I'm used to, despite how much I dislike it, but he starts talking to me and I'm able to pick up that he's flirting. I'm polite and I wait for the proper moment to end the conversation. When he asks for my number, I decline. He keeps talking and going into the usual shtick of why not and come on. At that point, I'm very uncomfortable and also annoyed because my workout timer has already gone off and it is past time for me to start my next set. I put on my big girl pants and tell him he's making me uncomfortable and I just want to finish my workout. Does he leave? No! He keeps going on and on about how he didn't mean it like that and he's not a bad guy. No actual apology to be found. Now, during this entire interaction, I've had to fart. I was being polite and holding it until he left, but seeing as he's not, I think, well, I know a way to get him to leave. And he's still talking as I let it go. It's silent, but rather smelly. It takes about 2 seconds for him to catch a whiff. He stops talking, and the face he makes is too much that I have to bite my lip to stop laughing. And that's when he gave me the look of, are you serious? And he finally leaves. And I'm left alone to finish my workout. Don't use me to parent your kids. I have dwarfism, and this often leads to weird interactions in public, especially with kids. Sometimes a kid comes up to me to ask why I'm so short, and I have a pre-prepared response for that, but most of the time they just loudly ask their parents why I'm so short. Usually the parents will awkwardly drag their kids away, telling them not to comment on people in public, which is sad but understandable. I like the parents who just say something about how some people are born like this. And even though we look a bit different, we're still regular people, just like everyone else. Sometimes I hear a gem like, I bet he shrank in the wash. What I can't stand is when people use me to parent their kids. I'm sure you can think of ways to convince your kids to finish their plate at dinner that don't involve pointing at a dwarf in public and saying, That's what happens when you leave food on your plate. Or he didn't listen to his mommy when she told him to eat all his vegetables. It's rude, it's humiliating, and it teaches your kid that differences are a bad thing and that people are at fault for their differences or disabilities. It just pisses me off. A few days ago, I was in public, and a kid who's maybe 4 or 5 years old was acting out, and his mom was clearly struggling to keep him under control. She pointed to me and told her son that I was one of Santa's elves, and that I was watching him and would tell Santa about his behavior. The kid's name was on a keyring on the backpack, so I just said, "It's okay, Hunter, you're already on the nice list, and Santa told me you're getting an iPad this Christmas." Hunter was excited. His mom was not. No, I won't vacate my seat halfway through the meal when I was here first. Petty revenge in progress. I've come to a cafe near my office for lunch, and the only space they had to sit was at the end of a communal table. No problem. I sat at the very end of the table, leaving 3 other spaces. I ordered my lunch, and I sat there minding my own business. A couple of women arrived soon after and politely asked if they could sit at 2 of the free spaces next to me. No problem. Then, when I was starting to eat my lunch, 2 other people arrived to join them. There was only 1 other free seat left, so what did they do? Yep, they asked me to move somewhere else. The cafe's full, I'm in the middle of my meal, and I was here before any of them, so I politely refused. Now they're carrying on about how selfish I'm being, taking up the entire communal table when I'm only 1 person. They watch me eat, willing me to finish and leave. Fuck 'em. Once I finished eating, I'm gonna order a coffee, lingo over it, and then have a slice of cake. Take my parking spot? What goes around comes around. This may be the pettiest thing I've ever done. So, in my city, there's a pub that's attached to a donut shop that serves the best donuts in the city, which always causes a long line. Because it's attached to the pub, it doesn't close shop until 9 p.m., as there's a solid flow of business rolling in. Anyway, my girlfriend and I get a serious hankering for some snacks, so we decide to head to the donut shop and arrive at around 8:30 p.m. by car. Now, there are only 3 parallel parking spots a little up the street from the place, and they're all 15-minute parking spots, which are usually full. We see up the street that, count our lucky stars, a spot is free. My girlfriend pulls a little ahead of the car in front of the spot, turns on her indicator, and begins to back into the parking spot when this little white Vespa driving behind us whips into the spot. I roll down our window and call out to the driver, "Excuse me, we were just backing in." The driver seemed to be a pretty univ student who shrugs her shoulders and calls out to me, "Sorry, first come, first serve," while her and her friend share a good laugh. My girlfriend suggests we just get donuts another time, and I tell her that she can drop me off here, I'll buy the donuts since I know what she likes, and she can loop around. She agrees. I pop out of the car, past the little white Vespa where the girls are still gathering their things, and head to the shop. As always, the line is super long for donuts, and since this is our last batch, the donuts are slim pickings. The girls are behind me, looking at the 5 or so different flavors that are left, talking about which ones are best and which ones they haven't had yet. I hear one of them jokingly mention, "Thank God we got a good parking spot," and they burst out laughing. And I get to the front of the line, and when asked for my order, request 2 dozen donuts, which is every last one remaining. The girls behind me didn't listen to what I ordered, but eyebrows of confusion started to form on their faces when they slowly saw each donut loaded into the boxes and their options dwindle. One of them, the driver, in desperation, asked the baker who was loading them in, "What, you're not even going to save a few for us?" To which I turned around and said, "Sorry, first come, first serve." She honestly looked like she just simultaneously solved a movie mystery and shit her pants. It's difficult to put into words, but truly an expression I can never forget. Best donuts I ever tasted, and enjoyed by the rest of my office the next morning. My mother is an asshole, and I've been collecting dirt on her for years. So my dear old mother has been my personal hell for about as long as I could remember. Starting from threatening to hit me with a bottle, to trying to break down my door while screaming obscenities at me, to actually hitting me over the head with an umbrella and yelling at me when I cried. I was 11. She blamed me for my sister's divorce. I was 6 at the time that happened, for years. Left for 3 months without a warning and then acted entitled to my forgiveness when she came back. Thrown things at me, broke 3 TVs, called me a myriad of names ranging from mild things like useless waste of space to an actual curse/punishment. The worst thing is she acts like she's the best mom in existence around other people, complimenting me and stuff, and I can't have a support system because no one would believe me when I say she's awful. But I had an ace up my sleeve I kept for 2 years now. I secretly took videos and audios of every horrible moment and kept them in a safe folder. I had moments like the ones mentioned above, and a lot more about her talking shit about neighbors, friends, her own eldest child behind their back. Tonight, I'm packing for uni. By morning, the whole folder will reach multiple people, including my half-siblings, aunts, uncles, neighbors, her besties, etc. Bad luck and worst day, mother. You always said justice is better served cold. I put fake notes on a Corvette's windshield that said, "Sorry I hit your car, you probably won't even notice the damage," because it was taking up 4 spots. So the title is fairly self-explanatory, but I'll elaborate. I was trying to find a parking spot for my university. The lot was notoriously crowded, but my campus didn't have a lot of options. While searching, I saw a Corvette taking up 4 prime spots near the front of the lot. After 10 minutes of waiting/looking for a spot, one opened up towards the back of the lot. Furious at the nerve of the driver being so inconsiderate, I wrote a note saying, "Sorry I hit your car, you probably won't even notice." And I left it on their windshield. When I got out of class and headed back to my car, I saw a very stereotypical college-age Corvette owner frantically searching their vehicle while yelling into their phone. I don't know who they were talking to, but I feel bad for them having to deal with this person. Friends called me a fake engineer. I bought their dinner. My daughter, 17, asked me to post this here. And I'm the dad who does as the women in my life tell me, so which is how I ended up in a restaurant tonight with snobs. So the characters: my wife, wife's coworker 1, and her husband, arrogant engineer 1, AE1, wife's coworker 2, and her husband, my CPA, and lastly, AE2 and his wife. Each couple has 2 teenage children with us. We're at a Japanese steakhouse in America where the chefs cook in front of you. CW1 and AE1 invited all of us for their youngest daughter's birthday, since their daughter is close with our daughter. So the parents are at one table and the teens at another. At the teen table, my daughters, 17 and 14, order sushi appetizers, mocktails, and shrimp with scallops. At our table, the sake is flowing, along with a few top-shelf drinks. My wife and I order our appetizers, drinks, and dinners. We're all paying for ourselves, and I see AE1 and AE2 seem to be in competition for who can spend the most. My CPA and I chuckle at them or stay out of the fray, until AE2 hears my daughter order and says to her, "Careful now, your daddy is only an agricultural engineer. He doesn't make as much as us real engineers." For context, they are structural engineers with bachelor degrees, and I'm an agricultural engineer with a PhD. I work for governments, private investors, and several agri-corporations. I own my own consulting firm. I help build sustainable, reusable gardens. And this work allows me to travel to poorer countries to help them use what they have to start growing their own food. Apparently, these men thought all I did was travel to impoverished places and teach people how to dig in the dirt. They believed I did all this work for free and therefore made very little money. I'm not rich by any stretch, but I'm comfortable. We don't do extravagance, so we have, savings, and my wife works. However, in 2023, I was awarded a handsome contract to design tower gardens in several states. It's a 7-figure contract over 3 years. Come to dinner, these guys ask me about the most ridiculous things. Like, is it good to grow onions and carrots in the same garden? And were laughing at me and my work until their wives told them to stop. I chalk it up to drunken arrogance and don't even bother to answer. My CPA was laughing so hard he almost fell out of his chair. Apparently he's AE1's CPA as well. He knows the ins and outs of both of our finances. AE1 taunts CPA to tell the table what he brought home last year after bonuses. CPA pulled up the figures on his phone and tells us, "It's about 1/3 of what I brought home in 2023. The CPA says, "I have yours up. Want me to share?" I decline, and he nods. Cue another round of taunts. I go to the restroom and find the waiter. I pay for the whole check and leave a generous tip on top of what they added for a big party. After our sorbet, the waiter thanks me in front of everyone for the tip and wishes everyone a good night. AE1 and AE2 stare at me for a moment. I smile and nod and tell CPA to tell them my income last year, after which I simply said good night. Petty? Absolutely. Gratifying? Damn right.